Another gentleman I was talking to said it very well. He said, I think what you're doing with theater is going to become more and more sought after. And I said, well, why would you say that? And he said, because of AI
Hmm.
and artificial intelligence. He said so much is moving towards the screens. We're not really interacting with people a lot, face to face as much anymore.
Hmm.
People are so glued to their phones, to their laptops, to their whatever, and people can be becoming more and more um, individualized and marginalized, becoming all alone, and the need to get out and to interact with live people and see live energy and effort
Hmm.
coming from that stage has a unique power to it.
Hi, everyone. This is Solum Podcast. We talk about Christian art, literature, philosophy, and spiritual formation. And today I'm excited to have the director of the Logos Theater, Noah Stratton. Hey, Noah.
All right, great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, why don't you go ahead and just tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I have the privilege of being the president for the Academy of Arts. Is kind of our parent organization, and then we have multiple kind of facets that come from the Academy of Arts. One of them being the Logos Theater. So I have the privilege of being the president for our ministry overall. My wife Nicole Stratton is the artistic director, so she's the real genius for everything that you might see on the stage or we're able to do a little bit now with film and a number of different areas that the Lord's broadened our ministry to. Yeah, the privilege of serving in that role at this time.
Well, that's great. Interesting that you bring up the film aspect. Is it like movies that you're doing, or is it like adaptations of plays primarily?
Sure. So we've done a few short films, and then yes, our film company is called Venture Films, and they're the ones that will film most of our stage productions. So we've done those and put a lot of those online and for purchasing there, for viewing there, the ones that we can. Um,
Hmm.
there's our lovely train going by. Right down the road there. It's great. But yeah,
Yeah.
so we have the us film company, and we're in pre-production right now for our first feature film. So we're very excited about that.
Oh, very interesting. How are you distributing that?
We're working on that still. In the process of making different connections. Ben Macy Jack, who is our Venture Films manager, he's been working on that for us, working on making different connections and points. So, really working to try to get that out. It's the story of two brothers, a true story, two brothers that were both trying to go make it rich in Nashville, Tennessee. One came to know the Lord and kind of went a different direction. The one stayed in and was really just pursuing fame and fortune. The one brother that got saved was praying for him for 20 years.
Mm.
And just incredible story of the brothers' lives. And eventually the second brother did come to know the Lord. And now is a traveling evangelist that goes around playing and singing and sharing his testimony about the Lord. And the other brother's a pastor. So the story, they came up with the term of brothers twice.
Mm.
And so that was really special. Of course, they're brothers by blood, and then they're brothers by the blood of Christ. So the film will be called Brothers Twice.
Very cool. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the Prodigal Son. So,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, a lot of
Um,
similarity. Yep.
yeah, yeah. Well, why don't you tell us about your love of theater? When did that kind of start?
Yeah, the it's interesting with the love of theater. I growing up, my parents had gotten us involved in all sorts of things. So I love sports, played a lot of sports growing up. Still try to play when I can. We were involved in camp ministry. We were involved in all sorts of church ministries, singing in the choir, helping out janitors at the church and school. And then, of course, we were involved in some drama as well. And very much involved in a lot of things and really didn't know what God wanted me to do with my life. And it wasn't until I came involved, Dr. Chambers, who started our ministry, the Academy of Arts. I met his fourth daughter, his four daughters, and I met number four at college. And she started sharing with me about the Academy of Arts. And I said, wow, there's a place that does drama and uses the arts and film and these different things just solely for the Lord. And they're using it for ministry, they're using it for discipleship. And it really caught my attention because most places are like, we're Christian, but we do offshoots of Hollywood and Broadway and Disney, and but we're
Mhm.
Christian. And I was like, well, that's not not really what I believe in or what I would do. So hadn't really moved forward in that direction. But when I found out about here, I said that really piqued my interest. Came and got involved here, and fell in love with the ministry. And then the Lord allowed me to fall in love with daughter number three of the Chavers, Dr. and Mrs. Chavers. So I married Nicole. She's number three of the four daughters.
Hmm.
And the love of theater, I say it much. We actually all joke here, our whole staff. We'd say if God shut down the theater tomorrow and pointed us in a different direction, we would be great with it. So we do enjoy the aspect of sharing what we believe, and again, jump into a lot of philosophy here,
Hmm.
but art being a literal characteristic of God himself, that he
Hmm.
is artistic, that he is the creator. And so with that, that's what we love about theater, is that we get to show beautiful, wonderful aspects of who he is in a very unique and exciting way, just as Jesus did when he came. Jesus was constantly telling stories. That there were times, yes, he stood up in the temple and he would do more preaching, what we probably would call today. But a
Hmm.
lot of his ministry was out on the hillsides and walking in the street and going down the road and telling stories. And there were a lot of times he told stories and then didn't even give the meaning behind them, just kind of gave it and then walked away.
Right.
Um, Number of conversations where his disciples come up and be, Jesus, what was that about? They're trying to figure out what he was talking about. But how that beauty of storytelling is so powerful. So um, I don't know that we would use the term so much of love of theater. We love the Lord and getting to show that the beautiful storytelling, artistic, creative beauty of who He is in this way. And I would say that's probably what we really love here.
Mhm. Yeah, well, your story kind of threw me for a loop. I was sure it was going to be daughter number four that you finally tied the knot with, but that's a good twist.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
yeah,
Expecting number four. Yeah.
right. So what do you think with theater is it like compared to other art forms like poetry or literature or other things like that? What can theater do that's really unique in the arts as opposed to the others?
Yeah, great question. I would say a uniqueness of it. There's several things. With showing this wonderful storytelling in a unique way on the stage, I think there is a unique power to live activity, live action, live portrayal.
Hmm.
Of course, film is incredibly powerful. We use film for a lot of things, and it's very powerful as well. There's something very unique though. As you come to a production, those actors that are getting up there on the stage, they can't just come sit in the audience and press play and everybody gets to sit back and just watch a recording of what they've done. There's something fresh and new that they have to bring, even if we've done a lot of performances. We were able to go to Museum of the Bible, which was fantastic. We've performed there almost 100 times. We're going to be performing in Branson, Missouri at the 2,000 seat auditorium there, the Freedom Encounter. We're going to be performing at the Ark Encounter, which is wonderful in Kentucky. Really love the opportunities that God is opening. But when you're performing a lot, there's a wonderful opportunity to have a connection with the audience. And live actors, a film is going to say what it's going to say. That's one of the things we talk about, the difference between broadcasting and communicating. Broadcasting is I am giving out a message. Communicating is I'm listening and I'm responding and you're responding to me and we're communicating back and forth. And I think there's great power in that in theater where there's many times that we as actors on the stage have felt maybe the audience is maybe not getting something and we can dig into that. We can lean into that. We can slow down. We can adapt a little bit of the production, not changing major parts or anything, but we can lean into maybe that to really make a connection with the
Hmm.
audience. And I am coming to this stage every day with new problems, new joys, new victories that I've had personally. Maybe I've just got some really bad news. And now I've got out on the stage and I've got to portray this part. I'm now able to bring my life into that part and communicate it in a way. And there's brand new people sitting out there every time that you now get to know it. Maybe the 100th time we've performed something, it's maybe the first time many of them have seen it, and so
Hmm.
there's a unique connection I think that can be made. And another gentleman I was talking to said it very well. He said, I think what you're doing with theater is going to become more and more sought after And I said, well, why would you say that? And he said, because of AI
Mm.
and artificial intelligence. He said so much is moving towards the screens. We're not really interacting with people a lot, face to face as much anymore.
Hmm.
People are so glued to their phones, to their laptops, to their whatever, and people can become more and more um, individualized and marginalized, becoming all alone, and the need to get out and to interact with live people and see live energy and effort
Hmm.
coming from that stage has a unique power to it. I've been in plays where I've felt a very strong connection with these people on the stage that I might barely even know. And there's other times that I've felt a strong connection on the stage as I've worked with, in performances where I've felt a great connection. And so I think that's a unique aspect of it. The communicative back and forth and the
Hmm.
live interactions, I think, is very powerful.
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, I had never thought of the AI encroaching on like film and stuff like that. In the book sphere, I know about like AI being able to produce like illustrations and stuff like that, and sometimes even more creative works like poetry and fiction and all that. So it is kind of a harrowing thing. So yeah, having that, I mean, you can't replicate a human like that on a stage. So yeah, that's really cool. That's a really good thing to think about. Um, well, with Logos Theater, why don't you just kind of tell us about it broadly? Like, what is really different about Logos Theater than other stage productions?
Sure. There's a lot of things I think that would make us a little bit different. So let me just dive in with several things. Number one, I think the whole purpose of why we were begun, why Dr. Chavers, my father-in-law, started the ministry overall, the Academy of Arts, and then why then the Logos Theater coming from that, was in the name, the Logos, the Word.
Mm-hmm.
John 1 talking there in the beginning was the Word, the Logos. And part of that is that spoken word. All of it's talking about Christ there, also about the lived out. He came and manifested, showed us the love of God in a beautiful and powerful way, that is really, really spectacular, of course, that's life changing, that's eternity changing for us.
Hmm.
So there's something uniquely powerful in communication, in manifesting the truth of God, as Christ did, as he came and showed the truth of God and lived that out for us. So the Logos Theater, why we were started, was to be a place where the Word of God would be shown in power, in excitement, in beauty, in creativity, but would always be pictured and brought back to Him. Our
Hmm.
motto, when Dr. Chavers started our ministry, was making the Bible come alive. And that's our motto still to this day, making the Bible come alive through the power of storytelling. And how that transforms people. That's our goal at the Logos Theater. Our goal is not to give a good show. Our goal is not to sell enough tickets that we can keep our nose above water. Our goal is to truly show the Lord in His beauty, His creativity, His power, in a very unique way. And so I think our methodology is probably different than maybe some. But I would say also then some more of the practical levels that might make us a little different. A lot of what we do is original. Um, we are very blessed here. We are have the ability to pretty much create almost everything in house. So we have people that can make our sets, people that can do all the hair, makeup, wigs, people that can make the costumes, people that can build all the sets, the amazing puppetry that God's enabled us to do the last several years. These large scale stage puppets have really been a fantastic. And those we had the people from Warhorse contacted us from over in London and said, "Where'd you get those horses?" And we said, "Well, we made them ourselves." And we have a lot of people ask us that. So, what big company do you have making these puppets for you? And it's us right here. We're very privileged and blessed to have people that have dedicated their thoughts and their talents and service to God, and then just seeing how He's multiplying it. So I think that's a very unique aspect about the Logos Theater, is that almost everything can be done in house.
Hmm.
Like a full production company. My wife and another lady here on staff are our primary script writers, and then adapting as well for the works that we're doing currently of C.S. Lewis, adapting his incredible works.
Mhm.
And so we're doing all of that with the scripts, sometimes writing brand new original scripts, sometimes adapting great works. So that's all being done in house. So that's a very unique aspect, I think, that we have that a lot of other places may not have. And a lot of that is also done from our methodology. We would not want to be a theater that's just kind of begging for the scraps from Hollywood and Broadway and Disney and saying, "Could you give us your whatever you have left over? We'll take that and we'll try to do it, but we probably won't be able to do it as good as you because we don't have budgets clearly that those places have. So we won't even look as good as you." And then all of a sudden we're just kind of turning into another place that's just, what are
Yeah.
we doing? What's the purpose? They're already doing that on a very grand scale. So why do we want to do it, but do it halfway? And
Mhm.
our methodology tells us that we want to do things that bring honor and glory to the Lord, and that art itself is going to speak. You can't give a play, you can't sing, you can't give a message, you can't tell something through a story without giving a message. It
Mhm.
will. The author who originally wrote it, or the person adapting it, or the group that's creating it, you will bring your thoughts to the table. The Bible tells us, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so you will put that into what you're working on. Um, and so that's very much for us. Our projects are always passion projects. They're from our hearts because we want to connect it back to our great creator. We want it to be something that is, again, that beautiful, powerful, captivating thing that can bring honor and glory to him. And so much of what we do is done in-house, which would be pretty unique about what we do. And then our productions. There are other places doing biblical productions. Our goal with our biblical, our historical, our, these one, the fanciful, I guess, if you will, with some of these with Lewis and others, every single one of these in these different categories that we're doing, we want them to be, again, pointing back to the Logos in some way. I might be jumping ahead with some of your questions, but with our current production of Scarlet Pimpernel, we just finished that up. That was an original work that my wife and Abigail Pierce, who helps her with writing, they had compiled the script from the books. There's a whole series of books on the Scarlet Pimpernel, and they had compiled that and had taken it directly from the books. And if you watch the play, you don't hear "Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and thou shalt be saved." You never hear that. You don't hear Jesus Christ's name at any time. They don't overtly, aren't constantly talking about God. When you're like, whoa, this is a Christian play. I am getting told very much that this is a Christian play. And so when we do productions like this at the Logos Theater, the purpose is to tell stories, again, that are beautiful, that have great truth in them. And that's what I love about Pimpernel, with the truth, honor, fidelity, courage, standing up for what's right, doing what's right even when you're all alone, doing what's right when the majority is against you, injustice. What does equality look like? Because again, the French Revolution, they're screaming equality while they're chopping all these people's heads off.
That's right.
Something's not quite right with equality, right? There's so many good messages in this story for us to think about. We're living in cancel culture, right? Where if someone doesn't
Mhm.
like you, they cancel you on social media. Thankfully, we haven't reverted completely back to the French Revolution, where they canceled you by cutting your head off. But there was literal cancel culture going on back then. And so, again, can we tell these stories from history? And the phrase, right? If we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat its mistakes. So, all of those reasons why we do a production like that, great messages, great themes that we can be sharing with the audience. And they are, a lot of these productions, we kind of call them bridge productions. We work a lot with Christian schools, homeschool groups, people in the high school, elementary world that are doing productions. And many of them are doing those Disney Junior and things like that. That's kind of their normal thing that they're doing. And if we come in and say, hey, buy a script from the Academy of Arts about Joseph, about God meant it for good, a lot of them would be like, Bible play, we like the fun of doing Disney. Well, if we can give them something like the Scarlet Pimpernel, a classical piece of work, that might be something that we could have them do. They, we hope they would absolutely love it. They would enjoy it. It would be a great production. And then they'd say, "Hey, what else do you have? That was great." And then we can start working into more of the biblical and historical plays that might have more of an overt message to them. So we definitely at the Logos Theater will do overt things that are outright biblical, very uh, what's the term? Very out there, I guess, just overt, and then other things that might be more covert. With again, as Jesus sometimes told stories and didn't say, "Here's the truth." He would just tell the story. There are times that we do that as well at the
Mhm.
Logos Theater. So went a couple different directions with that question, but hopefully that answered it to some degree.
Yeah, yeah, no, it did. Um, I think that when we think about Christian art, we think of a tension typically between the ministry side of it, and that it is a Christian based work, but also on the other side of it, like having some kind of artistic merit, because art is supposed to arrive kind of at its own conclusions, at least traditionally. So how do you, when you approach like a production with Logos Theater, how do you think about that tension, or is it even a tension in your mind?
Um, I would say that the subject matter is king for us. With that, my father-in-law would always say ministry implies content,
Mhm.
and so some people will say, well, if I just do something but do it really well, do it with great attention to detail, do it with excellence, do it with professionalism, then it's glorifying to God. We would question that to some degree. We would um, say we wouldn't quite agree with that, because there could be awful things that people could be doing, but they're doing them very well, very professionally, very with great attention to detail. Robbing a bank. I mean, you're gonna have to be pretty detailed. You're gonna have a lot of your logistics worked out. You're gonna have to be very proficient. You're gonna have to probably be a good actor to get in there and play the part of getting through to people. And you have to have all these skills, but do you walk out of there saying, "Yay, good job," because it honored God because you were professional, you had attention to detail, you did these things? No, I think we would understand no. So content for us is very, very important when we come to something, because art, again, art came from somewhere. Literature, paintings, plays, videos, they came from somewhere, and they came from someone's mind and from someone's understanding or refusal to understand about God. And
Mhm.
so they are now with art. One of the great quotes again we use a lot is that without submission there is no art. If you're not having things, knowing what's supposed to be the key thing, knowing what's supposed to support those things, you're going to have chaos. I think of an orchestra. If every single instrument is blaring as loud as it can, it'll be bad. It'll be a
Mhm.
cacophony of noise. But if you have certain ones at certain times rising and falling, at one point they take the forefront, and then another time they step to the back and submit to each other, then there's beauty, and then there's a wonderful sound that's coming out. And so for us, as we look at content that we're producing, where are we pulling this from? If we're going to adapt it, what are we creating? If it's an original work, um, is it something that lines up with these things about the Lord? So again, it may not, Scarlet Pimpernel, it may not say God, Jesus Christ, it may not say all these things, but those principles are there that are emulating him and pointing people to him in that way. We had a wonderful chance with a number of the C.S. Lewis productions. Those, of course, are very allegorical, but are not out there and overtly Christian unless you're looking for it. And if you're looking for it, it's quite overt. But if you're not looking for it, some people can completely miss it. And we've had that been an incredible draw for people all over the spectrum, all over the belief systems, to come and see and watch and love the story, love the beauty of it, love the professionalism of it, but then they're drawn towards something more. And that's what we always want to be drawing people to something more, and not just saying, here's art, what do you think about it? We want to say, art is telling you something to think about. So let's think about that in the right way, and let's make sure that's pointing back to the Lord.
Right. Yeah, it does seem like you, even though this is definitely a ministry, you focus on the craft, very much, and want to have that kind of lead into the message that you're trying to purport. Is that right?
Yes, exactly right. Professionalism and the excellence is huge for us. We serve the creator, right? We serve the one who made all these things, who spoke and it happened. I mean, wow, I won't go into all the philosophy on that right now, but tone and speaking, God was already doing it when creation started. So these things that we do as we're made in his image and we're speaking and talking, we're emulating him, or we're allowing corrupt communication to come out of our mouths. And so this very nature of what we're doing is an emulation of him. So our passion is, will this be will the world look at this and roll their eyes? We feel that we're doing a disservice to the Lord's name. In that, and I understand the funding is always an issue. We understand that probably more than anybody, that
Hmm.
funding is an issue in the arts. And we really wish that Christians everywhere would understand the power of the arts. I So much money is given to churches, to schools and higher, colleges. So much money is put into family training, and these seminars everywhere for all these things. Where is the Christian pouring out and money and training for the arts? We don't see a lot of it out there, and if it is out there, it may not always be seeming to line up with the scriptures. And so our passion is that these things would be done well, be done excellently, so that someone who doesn't know God, doesn't care, they're like, wow, what was that? That was fantastic. Who are you? And we've had that conversation so many times with people, like, who are you? What is this? And it's a
Right.
great opportunity. Now the art has pointed people, has made them question and think. And now we have a wide open platform to share truth. And that's the reason the love of theater, right, is very secondary to us. That is simply the tool that points people to God and then gets it in so we can directly give our message out. And if that excellence and professionalism is not there, a lot of people, and they walk on and don't give you a second look.
Hmm.
And since we serve the one who is the most excellent, the most creative, the most professional, if you will, we want that to emulate him as well, to the best that we possibly can, with hindrances, with not always having a lot of money. But it's amazing when you give your mind to the Lord, when you truly give it to him and ask what he wants you to do, amazing things happen. And we've seen that over and over again here, where we have literally a zero budget and we are pulling things from scrap piles. We are pulling things from leftovers. We are going to Goodwill and purchasing whatever, and you have to get very creative. And when you're pushed, when you have no budget, you have to be really creative. The world
Hmm.
can just, a lot of those big projects, they just throw money at it, right? They have a problem, throw some money at it, get something else in here, build something bigger, and they can just throw money at it. When you can't do that, that can be really frustrating, but it can also really force your creativity to kick into gear,
Hmm.
where you have to think outside the box. You have to think differently. And the Lord has forced us into that position many, many times, to where as we're growing now, it's still a challenge getting that funding in. That's one of my main things that I work on, is getting that funding in. And it's a constant challenge. And if I could go back to that thought of people, I think, recognizing and valuing excellence. Um, where do we see how do we see our culture changing? How do we see the world actually becoming a better place? More people knowing about God, more people following him, aware of him. How does that happen? Well, this is why we love theater, love the arts, and love film, because I believe this is the thing that is pointing people either to the Lord or away from him. And why do I say that? There's a study done recently that 70 to 88% of Christian young people are walking away from the faith.
Hmm.
Um, Christian young people. So probably they're in a somewhat decent church. Probably they're going to some sort of either homeschooling or school that is talking something about the Lord, probably if they're a Christian, they're in some sort of Christian family. So those three things that most Christians seem to view as the big important things: a good church, a good school, a good family. Um, why are 75% on average of those kids walking away from the faith? What's going on?
Mhm.
I believe it is the storytellers of our day. Steve Jobs said, the greatest person in this world will be the storyteller, because the storyteller dictates the vision, the values, and the agendas of an entire generation.
Mhm.
And you see that with Disney, with Broadway, with Hollywood, with all these Christian young people that seem to be coming from good churches, good schools, good families. Why are they walking away from the faith? Because the person on average today is spending anywhere from 6 to 10 hours on media of some sort per day. And so that's flooding into their brain all these methodologies.
Mhm.
You live for yourself, you follow your heart, you do what feels good for you. That's everywhere in the Hollywood and Broadway world and the Disney world. And that, if that's just what's flooding into your mind all the time, the music industry, that's pervasive in the music industry. Pretty much all the genres of music are pushing that. Do what you feel like, do what you want, do what your heart tells you to do. No wonder 75% of Christian young people are like, well, I'm going to go follow my heart. Doesn't matter what the
Mhm.
church said, what the school said. And I mean, a church, what? You're getting 5, 6 hours of input a week, six to
Yeah.
10 hours a day. You're getting 5 to 10 hours. You're getting 70 to 80 hours of media pouring into your brain. You're getting way more of that. No wonder the Christian young people are walking away, because that, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Philippians 2 tells us, let the mind of Christ be in you. Well, clearly the mind of Christ isn't in you when you're pumping in all these other philosophies and ideas through the media world. And so that's why we want to be on the front lines fighting for this, producing something excellent, exciting, powerful, but is pointing people to God and not pointing people to something else.
Right. Yeah. And I think that um, just the way that the culture is set up nowadays, it seems like we're disconnecting people from reality by kind of insulating them in their own through social media and just smartphone culture and being just hooked to a screen for 6 to 10 hours a day, like you were saying. So what we kind of hope to do is integrate people back into reality, and we have to have some kind of message with that to reconnect them, right? And that will be you might call it a bias or whatever, um, but it is necessary in a way. I mean, we all operate from preconceptions,
Yep.
and in Hollywood and other media, it seems to be one way that's opposed to our way. But Christianity, it seems, is more concerned with reality and what's real. It's obsessed with truth, you know. Um, and a lot of people might say that you're propagandizing if you're operating from a Christian worldview and art, but it's like um, I just don't think that's the case. I don't know if you'd agree with that or not, but
I completely agree. I believe art, the very nature of art being the nature of God, that everything's speaking, right? So
Mhm.
the older I get, people would talk about this a lot in Christianity, that there are some thou shalt and thou shalt nots, but then the rest of it is a bunch of gray area, and it's kind of just up to you and it's up to me to kind of figure out what we want. Instead of saying, no, I think every choice that I make is a choice for the Lord or for others. Jesus, others, you, right? The definition of joy. But yet, if I'm following my heart, I'm doing what feels good to me, what I think's right, what my conscience is fine with. If that's what I'm doing, then I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be fulfilled. I'm not going to be following the Lord. And so, with the
Mhm.
art, as I am literally showing something through storytelling on the film or stage, I am propagandizing. I am, no matter what I'm doing. If I'm telling a story of someone else, well, these are just the facts of what that person went through. Well, you're telling a story, you're giving a message.
Mhm.
If you're doing something very overtly for the Lord, okay, obviously you're giving a message. If you're telling some horrible serial killer story, and it's just dark and depressing and gory and awful, and there's all sorts of filth and stuff in it. Well, I got to be true to the story. Well, does the Bible do that? Does it dwell on evil things, or does it say there's evil, here's what we do to respond to that? So
Mhm.
I would say to anybody that would worry about, oh no, you're not just letting art speak for itself, then I would say, yes, art does speak for itself. And so do you want to give a message that supports the Lord in his way, or do you want to give a message that does not? And
Right.
it will be propagandizing. It will, one way or the other, it will happen. So
Mhm.
which direction do you want to give propaganda to? Which direction do you want to give information and support to with your art?
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to execution. I like I admire like what the Kendrick brothers have done with Pure Flix and things like that, but um, I think it's pretty universally agreed that it's more preaching than it is like really true storytelling.
Yeah.
And I think that that's actually the way that they approach it explicitly. But that approach does not lend itself to craft, I don't think.
Yeah.
So would you say that you operate from a different principle than with Logos Theater when you approach a production?
Yeah, I think so. Using that illustration with them, yeah, I appreciate what they're trying to do very, very much. It's an immense amount of work to put on
Hmm.
a video production. It's unbelievable what they've done in that way. Our heart very much is to tell true stories, is to not go make up a story that I can kind of put my message into. We want to tell stories that have happened, stories from the Bible, stories from history, uh, with what Lewis shares in his Lewis works, like those are things coming from what he went through, and he's putting truth into play, and
Hmm.
he's doing it beautifully, like you said, crafting it. He's not saying do this, do this, do this. He
Right.
he is giving incredible thoughts for you to, and that's what I love. It's shocking to me when people say that the Chronicles of Narnia is a kids series, because I get what they're saying. I get, okay, it's written for like a an older elementary age group, but
Hmm.
if an adult reads it, your mind is blown at
Right.
some of the things that he's just dropping in there and walks on, and you're like, whoa, 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 stop the presses. What did he just say? Because look at all that means, and people have done that. They've taken his works and written books and books and books off of what he wrote, and that's understandable. He was crafting and telling stories. My wife, and again, can't go into all this, but she's incredible with crafting stories, because that is always in our mind to say, how best can we tell the story?
Hmm.
And that's hard. You got to put your story on the chopping block, and you got to chop things out that might not be best and what you might like, but is it best for the message? And that's what I think really drives us, is the message, so that we craft those stories. Again, some may be a little more overt, but then are we crafting it? Even if it is overt, I'm still engaging you in a really great story, so that people, again, don't know the Lord, don't care about the Lord. They're all about the art and just having a good experience. We want to draw them in where they're on the edge of their seat. They're listening what's going to happen next.
Hmm.
Even if there is something about the Lord in it, if there's something about the scriptures in it, that they're listening and they're connecting with it, because that's the power of a good story. You connect, you start putting yourself into the character's shoes, and then you want to find out what happens next, and then you got to flip the page, or you got to watch the next episode, or you want to see the next play that's coming out.
Hmm.
Why? Because that storyteller got you to connect. And like you said, that connection, AI, kind of breaking a lot of those connections,
Hmm.
making fake connections. When you make real connections, that's where powerful things happen. And that's where the content is so important. Are we making connections based on truth, or are we making connections based on sensuality, on wrong things that are going to lead us very much in the terrible direction?
Right. Yeah, no, and even if the task is not to like promulgate some kind of message explicitly, you will, I mean, when you create anything, you're operating from some kind of bias or worldview. So in the case of many secular productions, they're going to have conclusions and inadvertently uh, express or advocate some kind of what we would say is a wrong message that will lead you away from God and away from what's actually real. So, and I wrestle with this too, as I've called Solum a Christian press, because of the kind of connotations that come with that, of
Mhm.
a lot of Christian art has been just straight up only propaganda without any real artistic merit. So, but I also just want to be, I mean, I want to be forthright with people. Like, this is the
Yeah.
worldview that I'm coming from with the art that I'm putting out there. And it sounds kind of like that's the way you approach a logos as well.
Yeah, and it kind of doesn't it give us both a higher level of accountability because now I
I'll
know
say,
people are looking at us saying, "Oh, you're a Christian press. Oh, you're a Christian theater. Oh, okay." And like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, we'll come see what we're doing. And then they're like, "You're wait, you are Christian?" Because
Right.
that was amazing. And they're not expecting the quality, they're not expecting the attention to detail, the excellence, the professionalism. And even if it's something a more overt message, they're still appreciative of the attention to those things that we've seen even with our Bible plays, with a missionary play that again is going to be a very strong message, a very overt message. They still appreciate it. They still love it. It still draws them in
Mhm.
because of that saying, yes, we are Christian, but we're going to give this our best because the Lord deserves it. And because we want to make that connection with you through storytelling and not getting up and saying, you're a sinner. We got the answer for you. Come talk to us.
Right.
You're right that we can beat people over the head sometimes. And it just drives them away. Another quote from my father-in-law, the same when I'm blanking on it, but the same feed that gathers the hens can also scatter them.
Yeah.
But how are we throwing it? How are we putting it out there? It will either draw people to us and to the Lord, or it will make them run. And how important that is, especially in the arts, with Broadway, Hollywood, Disney setting a level of excellence, professionalism, not in messaging, but professionalism. How important that is. And I think you're right too. What you said earlier, that a lot of places they might not say they're propagandizing with what they're doing, a secular place, but they're stating things as facts. They're
Yeah.
stating they have a person in there who's a very strong feminist. They have a person in there who's a very strong um, uh, homosexual. All these different things that they take these things as just facts and they just are what they are. And
Mhm.
okay, well, you're saying that this is there, and then how do we respond to that? If I'm entering into your characters, how do we respond to those things? How do we act with those things and interact with them? That then gives a lot of grounds for teaching someone to go the correct way or saying, I'm just giving a message. I'm not saying anything. Yes, you are,
Yeah.
by your statement of facts in your art, in your play, in your film.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of the productions that you'll see, whether it's movie or play or fiction, like a lot of those that say like I'm not out here to advocate anything, or I have no message or whatever. Well, it usually winds up in something nihilistic or something approximating nihilism. And it's like, well, that enough of that is really gonna seep into the subconscious, and I would hate to see kind of where it goes.
No.
So yeah, it is like you are in doing art, you are advocating for something, and it really just does come down to what you're advocating for.
Yes,
Um,
exactly right.
but one thing I did want to touch on as we move on here is that you mentioned that Logos Theater has these bridge productions like the Scarlet Pimpernel, which is a secular work. Um, a lot of people on either the Christian side or the secular side might think that it's problematic to take a work from one worldview and then adopt it into another. And for the record, I think the Scarlet Pimpernel it's a great play that you've done. The production value was out of this world. And you really took me by surprise. The first scene in that is a beheading, and like from my vantage point as I was watching it, I was like, I was like, this looks really real. So it really caught me. Yeah, that was really good. But anyway, so how would you just address like somebody being concerned about taking a play that was written from one perspective and then adopting it into your own?
Sure. I think the one illustration we use a lot is the group of scientists and astronomers, all those different people, all the people that work together to get to the moon for the first time.
Hmm.
From my understanding of what I've read about it, they didn't have prayer meetings every morning. They didn't say, we're going to go to the moon to learn more about God. God created the moon, and that's why we're going there. We want to explore the heavens that God made. You hear very little of that, if any. And yet, what? They got to the moon. How did they get to the moon? They got there by submitting to God's principles, knowing what gravity does, knowing what friction does, knowing what that amount of speed will do to a flying vehicle, what it will do to a human body. They had to study these things, learn these things. They were principles that God has set in place, laws of nature, laws of physics, all these different things. So they were able to succeed in doing something, and they succeeded because they followed God's principles. And
Hmm.
so, like Scarlet Pimpernel, why was he able to succeed at what he did? Okay, well, that's secular. Well, is it? He's using honor. He's using trust. He's using building comrades and relationships. He's using incredible ways of getting a job done. He is garnering support. All these things that are trying to defeat evil, wrongdoing, injustice that's happening. All these things are God's principles.
Hmm.
So I don't really view it as like taking a secular and we've made it Christian, because again, we didn't in each scene we don't have someone quote a Bible verse, or something like
Hmm.
that. We're telling the story, but there's all these principles in there that point back to Him. So that's what we try to do with a secular story. There are plenty of stories out there that might not have, again, the Lord's name, that might not have God talked about, scriptures quoted all throughout it, where it's very much pushing a message. But if you look, you see God's principles all the way through it. If there
Right.
is success, if there is something, again, looking at the subject matter, if this is something that is just a story about nihilism and selfishness and depression and anxiety and alcoholism and fornication and all these things, and it's just dwelling on that, okay, is there a reason for it? What I'm not going to try to take that. And I believe there are certain genres that we I don't think Christians should really even get involved in, because I feel like the whole genre has by its creation and by its continual then looking at the fruits of that genre, you can see this is based on selfishness. This is based
Hmm.
on glorification of oneself. It's based on nihilism. It's based on these things. So therefore, I don't want to attach my name to it and put that on our stage,
Hmm.
and try to pull out some scriptural truths or pull out some things in it. We want to look at content that already has God's principles in it. That, yeah, maybe secular, but God's principles are there, and we can just amplify those.
Right. Yeah, and that does kind of remind me of what we were talking about earlier. There is kind of a responsibility as an artist to advocate for things that are helpful. Um, like no matter really where you land, it is kind of incumbent on you to want to elevate and help the audience in some way, or help them to see some part of what's true. And I think that we've kind of lost that. You know, David Lyle Jeffrey has said like we've set up a private mythology kind of in art today, where it's all introspective and it's all about me, and so, and that doesn't help anybody, but maybe you're helping yourself, maybe not. um so so yeah, again, I think it does really come down to execution and how we do these things.
Yeah.
Um so so yeah,
Yeah,
no.
and
Mm.
if the focus, you're exactly right. What the gentleman said you just quoted there, if that is the focus, to me, and be introspective and look, and that's all there is to it, then I'm not going to any help. I'm going to get worse and worse. I'm going to
Mhm.
spiral downwards. The Bible tells us heart's deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So if I'm looking at my heart and my way of doing things and introspecting and thinking, then yeah, it's right. That will lead to error every time.
Right. Yeah. And you know, we also have some kind of metaphysical bedrock to believe in beauty,
Mm.
like actual beauty, not like some kind of vain, ultimately vain pursuit of it. So in that, you know, we have again a responsibility, but also an incentive really to promote what's beautiful and to chase after it, because in that way we are kind of chasing God. So yeah.
Yeah,
Um, well, let's kind of get more into like the practical things here as we start to wrap up. Um,
sure.
so if you're looking to get into theater as a Christian, namely, uh, where would you kind of recommend starting out?
The Academy of Arts, Logos Theater.
Okay.
um, for sure, we're always looking for people, but I think very much uh, it is hard, and that's why we're very grateful for these opportunities God has given us to go to the Ark Encounter, to go to Museum of the Bible in Washington D.C., to go out to Branson, Missouri, because we would like to be setting up more and more places where young people can go and they have a legitimate excitement or desire to be involved in this, and they do want to do it for the Lord, but they don't see a place to go do that well and professionally and actually make a living. Can you imagine that off off of the arts? And
Mhm.
um, so we're trying to raise up places like that where people can get the right training and the right mindset to go. And we're excited for more and more of those places, hopefully to be available for young people, because it's hard for our graduates, for our college program. When they graduate, we can't hire them all.
Mhm.
And where do they go afterwards if they have a desire to continue on in this? There's not a lot of places that we feel like we can fully recommend, because it's a lot. We've talked to quite a lot of people, and they'll say, "Oh, I'll go and try to go out to LA or go up to New York, and I'll try to get in there, and I'll be salt and light. That I'll make a difference." And our belief system is much more. There were two different schools of thought with the Pilgrims. There was the Puritans and there was the Separatists. The Puritans tried to stay there and purify it from within. The Separatists said it's too far gone. We have to separate and go find somewhere else where we can actually worship God. And
Mhm.
we would be a little more on that side of the Separatists of saying if you're trying to go in and change Hollywood or Broadway as a Christian, you're probably not going to make it unless
Right.
you never talk about Christianity. Because normally, when you start talking about Christianity and spreading that, normally then you don't get work anymore because people don't want you around. And we've had several conversations with people who were in those industries, who were high up with people, got saved or started sharing more, and immediately the work dried up for them. So that's again why we're trying to give places where people can go and have opportunities to do this at a professional level, but not having to sacrifice morals or their belief system to try to get some work. So
Right.
we're working on trying to build up those places.
Yeah, no, and it is like I think it is incumbent on us also to create kind of a new space for creativity.
Yeah,
Because it is, I mean, Hollywood is really not open to us,
no,
in any real sense. And so we need to foster some kind of creative Christian subculture where we can do actual good art, but not also have to hold the hand of people that don't really share what we're trying to do.
right.
Um, so, and I guess my last question here, Noah, is, and you might not like this, but I have to talk about money. So,
Yeah, yeah,
uh, you know, how does anybody make a living as a Christian, in the
yeah,
arts like this?
yeah. God's been good to us, and I don't mean that in giving us all the money we'd ever want or need, because as I mentioned earlier, it's been a constant struggle. We have 38 on staff now, and they're all able to survive. It's not They're not getting a lot of money. We have to get creative. because of our weekends are normally more busy, we give Mondays off, where a lot of them will get some extra time with their family or will go get a part-time job, and make some more money to try to make ends meet. But the Lord's been so good in that, through this process. And I would say for people, it is a challenge if you want to have a professional, excellent experience. It is hard to find a Christian place where you can get paid a living wage. There are legitimate challenges there for sure. Um, I think with this, God is building something, and that's what I love so much about my father-in-law. He was an amazing man, just an amazing man. God uniquely brought him into the place where he needed to be to start this ministry. He was a pastor for 13 years, so he had an amazing biblical foundation of everything that he did. He was incredibly talented. He had two radio shows at the time of being 9 years old, and could have gone on to be very famous. His dad wasn't a believer and said, "Come on, Nicky," his name was Nicky, "you need to go on and get famous. I want to see your name in lights." And his mom really kept his feet on the ground and said, "No, you've been given talents and abilities by God. You couldn't have earned them. You couldn't have stolen them. You don't deserve them. They were given to you as a gift. There's a down payment on your life. You need to use them for the Lord and for others." And she kind of set that philosophy that we still have today, a couple generations ago. And so that he was uniquely crafted, I think, to start the ministry. And it's something that I think is growing now. There are more and more places that are trying to stand for what's right, to talk about the Lord, to tell beautiful, well-crafted stories. And so I'm glad I think there's places are expanding for that, where people can come and get a job and be paid a living. But yes, it is hard. It is hard. I feel though that what kept my father-in-law going was a calling and not a fun desire. And I think I see that a lot, especially with people in the arts, with the stage, with film, with other things. Well, I have this fun thing I like to do. Well, is it a calling that God has for you? That's how we view it. That's why I kind of gave that long answer to your question, love of theater. For us, it's a calling for us. So when the money's not there, when things are tough, when we're getting ripped apart for something, when we're getting critiqued, and when there's difficulties, when we have to stand for truth, and when people don't like that, what keeps us going? That we love theater? We'd leave in a heartbeat. If, again, like I said before, what keeps us going is the calling. And I think that for people, do they truly view what the desire to be stage or film or the arts, do they view it as God's calling on their life? I think that will change, and that you will see God supply, not laying out it, not giving you a pile of gold to go pursue your dream, but he will, faithful is he that calleth you, who also will do it. So if he's called you to it, it will happen. It will be hard. I'm not encouraging to anybody who's ever out there and who's ever listening. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun dancing, singing through life. It's going to be really hard. And so what keeps you going? The applause of men stops, right? You do a play, someone claps. Okay, that's actually what turned me off from theater earlier on in college. I had some larger opportunities to be involved in some things, had some success in that. But I remember vividly walking off the stage and being like, what was that? I just spent months of my life. Whose life was changed? What person is closer to the Lord from that? What relationship has been started where someone's getting discipled in their walk with Christ? What was that? And it really turned me off to theater for a little while. Of It's just empty. It's for self. It's for people to just do their artsy thing. But now it's a calling for me, and it's totally different. So I think with the money side of things, it's got a missionary. Many times people, they feel a call to the mission field, and we have for many years called ourselves missionaries to America's youth, because that's our goal, is to evangelize and disciple through this incredible, beautiful, captivating way of giving out truth. And we've seen it just transform kids' lives. That calling is what keeps us going, and the Lord provides. It is hard, and we still, even right now, with When I first came on in the Academy of Arts in the ministry, I think there were 16 people on staff, and now we have 38. So we've, more than doubled in size, and praise God for that. But it still is a challenge. The money is always a challenge, it seems. But that's what keeps us going, is our calling. So for anybody out there saying, how do I make a living in this? I would kind of turn the question back on them and say, has God called you to this? If he's called you to it, to be all in a mission and a ministry to reach the world, and what's the Great Commission? It's for all of us. It's not just for pastors and missionaries. We're all supposed to be making disciples and going to all the world and preaching the gospel to every creature. So with whatever skill, that desire God's placed in our heart, do we view it as a calling that we will stick to, and ask God to provide? And again, I claim that promise. Faithful is he that calleth you, who also will do it. And that's kind of how I would answer that question.
All right, wonderful. Yeah, well, thank you, Noah, for joining me today. And I'll be praying for the success of Logos Theater.
Yeah, thank you very much. We really appreciate the opportunity to be on and share a little bit about what we have going on. And we really look forward to how God's going to keep working, and appreciate the work there, Solum Press, and what's going on there as well.
All right, great. Well, thank you for listening. Bye-bye.